What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. Action-packed slate of hoops here on a Monday. No games on Tuesday due to Election Day in the United States, so the NBA said, okay, we're going to go ahead and pack non-stop competitive great hoops all night on Monday. It was a phenomenal night of basketball, so we've got a lot to go ahead and talk about. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos, and comment down below some of your biggest takeaways from these games. Let's start things off with Timberwolves versus Celtics. This is a game that I personally was very excited for going into things. The Celtics have been one of my favorite watches in the league and just all around one of the best teams in the association leading up to this point. Tatum has been an MVP type player. Jaylen Brown's been good. Porzingis and Jrue Holiday have been seamless additions. Derek White's playing the best basketball of his career. They've just been a well-oiled machine and most nights are blowing the competition out. But they're facing a really tough Minnesota team who recently has been on a roll of their own. Not too long ago, they defeated the Denver Nuggets, the first loss that Denver has had all season, and they did so in decently dominant fashion, holding that offense to their lowest total, I think, of the entire season so far. So coming into this, I was really excited to see who would come out on top, and ultimately, it was the Minnesota Timberwolves defeating the Celtics in overtime, mainly behind the play of none other than Anthony Edwards. Last season, he took a jump to an all-star, and it felt like this year, following his great playoff series against the Nuggets, he was poised to become something even more and maybe break out to that all-NBA caliber guard that the Wolves need him to be to eventually compete for a championship. And through the early going of this season, Ant has been that exact type of player, putting up career highs almost across the board, doing it efficiently, and having games like this where he takes over in the biggest moments and just wills the Timberwolves to victory, even against some of the league's best teams like Boston. He was great all game, but specifically in overtime, he went 4 of 6 from the field for 8 points, a board, an assist, and a steal. Over half their points in OT. There was really nothing Boston could do. They tried their best. They threw a multitude of defenders at him. This is a great defensive team, but nobody could slow down Anthony Edwards. He was a man on a mission, and he's one of those guys that just gets in those zones. When Ant is on fire, there's really not much you can do. You could put maybe the whole team defensively on him, and he's still going to find a way to go ahead and get you a bucket. He's really evolving into one of the league's most unstoppable scorers. He can hit the three. He's highly athletic. He's really strong and can battle through contact and finish around the rim. You can't do much about him. He also continuously is developing high-level counters. He's improving as a playmaker, as a decision maker. This is by far the best version of Anthony Edwards that we've ever seen. And if he continues on this trajectory, because he's only a few years into his NBA career, there's no telling how good Ant could get. He's been amazing, and they need this type of scorer, the guy that can just take over and will them to victories, because the offense so far has been very hit or miss. Cat in particular has really struggled offensively, and we'll talk about him a bit later. But with Ant out there, at the very least, they know that there's one guy who can consistently get the buckets and push them over the edge offensively when nobody else can. And his great play has been in addition to the Timberwolves' incredible defense so far. Against this Celtics team, they held them to just 109 points in overtime. This has been the best offensive team in the league going into this game, and I will say they were missing Derek White, who's a big part of what they do, but even still, holding them to 109 is no small feat, and a big part of that has been the play of Rudy Gobert, who the Timberwolves have been constantly clowned for trading for. Last offseason, they gave up a lot to bring him in, and it didn't result in much in the first year, but a couple of times throughout the season, you could kind of see the vision, and now Gobert has gone from last season seeming like he was on the decline to being back at his DPOY level. He is dominant and looking like his Utah Jazz self, the guy that's going to go down as one of the best rim protectors of this entire generation. He has completely shifted everything for this Timberwolves team. This is what I thought the team was going to be like last season. A lot of you might remember, or if you're new to the channel, welcome. You probably don't remember. I picked the Timberwolves to be the 2 seed going into last season because I thought that Gobert was going to come in and anchor one of the league's best defenses, and they were going to be a great regular season team. I didn't think they were going to win the championship or make the Western Conference Finals, but I did think they'd rack up a bunch of regular season wins. And finally, this season, it feels like they're playing the basketball I thought they were going to play last year. Gobert, like I said, back to his DPOY type self. Jay McDaniels is a nightmare on the perimeter. His length and his size is difficult for any player to go up against. He feels like an early lock if the season ended today for one of those all defensive spots. Anthony Edwards continues to level up as a defender, using his frame more. He's very physical. It's hard to score against him because he's just bumping you and making you really work for any of your buckets. Even Cat has held up decently enough on the defensive end so far for them to be the best defense in the league. The size that they have across the board just gives opposing teams fits. It's so hard to score when you're going through a mountain of big bodies between Jaden McDaniels and Cat and Gobert, even Naz Reid off the bench. Anthony Edwards isn't the biggest guy out there, but he's physical. It's just exhausting to try and score against this Timberwolves team. This is how I thought it was going to be last year, and now it finally feels like the vision that they had when they traded for Gobert is somewhat coming to fruition early on in this season. Amongst all of this, Naz Reid continues to be one of the best bench players in the entire league, putting up 14 points, 4 boards, and 2 assists. Just a constant positive presence every time the Wolves bring him off the bench. I love what I've seen from the Timberwolves so far. They, again, had a couple of shaky performances to begin the year, but it feels like they're finally finding their stride as this hard-nosed defensive team that feels like it still has a decent bit of offensive upside and is going to continue to play well. The efficiency, I think, will come down a little bit because he's shooting 52% from the field and 47% from 3. I don't know if that's sustainable the way that it's going right now, but I do think it'll be the most efficient season of his career, and he's putting up 28.2 points per game, so if he puts up anything close to that, it's an all-NBA caliber year in all likelihood. Meanwhile, Jaden McDaniels has been really efficient, but isn't as involved in the offense. I think he's going to come around when he finds his rhythm. Cat still has yet to get going offensively, and if he comes around, the Wolves are really, really scary because he's putting up some of the worst numbers of his entire career so far. If Towns gets anywhere close to the level he's been in some past years, this team is an absolute nightmare to face. I really like what I've seen from them so far. Again, this is what I thought they'd be last year. I guess I was just maybe a year too early on the Timberwolves hype train, but now they're playing some really good basketball and it feels somewhat sustainable. Now the Wolves have burned me in the past when I've made these praise videos for them, so we'll see if they end up tricking me again. But so far, really like what I'm seeing from them. Probably the weakest point so far is Cat, who I mentioned has been struggling offensively. And the more that I watch this team, the longer this Anthony Edwards era of the Wolves goes on, the more I start to question the long-term fit and how long it's going to be before ultimately I think they're almost assuredly going to have to trade Cat. The Wolves really started to go on a run in overtime. Ant got it going when Cat fouled out. He got a 6 foul, and immediately they went on a 9-0 run against the Celtics. He, in this game, had just 7 points, 10 boards, and 3 dimes with 7 turnovers, including fouling out, like I said. Some of those turnovers were really bad. He was really rough down the stretch of this game. He's got so much talent, it just feels like it doesn't fit super well in this system. Ant is clearly the guy now, so they don't need him to be a volume scorer. He's not the best defender. I don't know. The more that I look at this team, it just really feels like Cat is going to be the odd man out, especially because they gave all that money to Jaden McDaniels, and between him, Ant, and Gobert getting paid a ton, I think Cat is going to be the one that ends up getting traded. I'm not saying they have to do it anytime soon because they're on a roll right now, and if Cat gets going, the Timberwolves could really level up again, but I am saying that if they end up trading him within the next calendar year or so, it's not going to surprise me whatsoever, and ultimately that might be the move that they have to make to get them over the hump, trading him for some pieces that just fit better on this team. But regardless, the Timberwolves continue to roll, looking like one of the best teams in the Western Conference, and if they continue on this path, they could be a really tough out for anybody in the playoffs. We saw them give the Nuggets arguably their toughest series of their entire finals run last season. They could maybe do that again to some of these better teams in the West, especially if Ant keeps playing like the superstar that it seems like he's becoming, and Gobert continues to anchor this defense at a depoy level. As for the Celtics, the Jays were pretty good in this one. Tatum had 32, 5, 2, and 5 steals. Jaylen Brown had 26 points, 7 boards, and 4 assists. Really, it felt like their offense just got kind of stagnant down the stretch in the final moments, which is something that we've seen from the Celtics in the past, but I'm not going to get as worried about it. I think missing Derek White was a big blow to them. If they had him out there, I think things move a little bit more smoothly, and ultimately, they would have been in a better position to try and slow a guy like Anthony Edwards. Next, let's move into OKC versus Atlanta. The Thunder get a big bounce back win after a couple of losses, specifically against the Golden State Warriors without Shea. Shea returns in this one and has a great game, 30 points, 8 boards, 9 assists, and 1 steal on 55% shooting. They also gave Trae Young a lot of problems. He shot just 5 of 18 with 7 turnovers. Been a really bad start to his season, similar to what we saw from him last year, but this time it feels even worse. I didn't check the numbers, but it just feels like Trae is continuing to have these slow starts and really struggling. He hasn't felt like the Trae Young that we saw dominate the league at one point, really ever since the end of not last season, but the year before in that playoff series against the Heat. I don't know what it is. He's just not knocking down threes. It doesn't feel like he's as confident with some of his moves offensively. The playmaking is still there. He was giving us a lot of problems in the pick and roll and finding guys in their spots. Shooters weren't really knocking down a lot of shots tonight for the Hawks. But overall, they need his scoring to get going to really be the best version of themselves this season. And even without it, they've been solid. So if that comes along, the Hawks are in a pretty good spot. For the rest of the Thunder, Dort gave Trey a lot of his problems, had 19 points, continues to shoot the lights out of the ball. Chet had his least efficient game offensively yet, but was still very impactful in this game, had some huge defensive plays, a number of blocks, got a big offensive board into an and one at the end of this game that put it out of reach for the Hawks, making a fourth quarter comeback. And finally, J-Dub had his season high 21 points, really taking advantage of some of the smaller mismatches that the Hawks had on him at some points in this game. Next, let's go over Sixers Wizards, not for very long because this was a slaughter. The Wizards got destroyed, just not a very good team at this point, which is to the surprise of nobody, I think. But the Sixers do look like a really good team. They've been a well-oiled machine to begin this season. I think this pushes them to 5-1 on the year, and a lot of that has been the play of Joel Embiid coming off an MVP season where a lot of people said it was fraudulent, he didn't deserve it. He's looking the part of an MVP again so far to start this season. In this one, had 48 points, 11 boards, 6 assists, only playing 3 quarters, and in the third quarter alone, Embiid had 29 points on a perfect 10 of 10 shooting. The Wizards had absolutely no answer, and I know, again, the Wizards aren't very good, but to put up 29 points on perfect shooting, you've got to be in a different zone to do something like that, which is what Embiid has been in so far to start this season. He's looked great defensively too. He's playing maybe the best basketball of his entire career to begin this season, which is a lot to say for a guy that just won MVP. Maxi's putting up 22 points and 11 assists in this one. Batum had 3 of 4 shooting from 3. Tobias put up 18 points. This Sixers offense had 120 points going into the fourth quarter. I know the Wizards defense isn't good, but that's a different level. The Sixers have looked really good so far. There's probably a video coming on them here sooner than later. I've been really impressed with the Nick Nurse-led team that feels like they've kind of got their joy back. Next, let's go ahead and talk Bucks Nets. This one really was the battle of Cam Thomas and Mikal Bridges versus Giannis Antetokounmpo. And ultimately, Giannis and the Bucks do win. He had probably his best game of the season so far with 36-12, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 2 blocks. Dame did his best. He had 21, 6, and 7, but shot just 5 of 15. Another really rough efficiency game for Dame, who's still trying to find his rhythm. But on the other side, we need to talk about Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas has been on another level to start this season. He's one of the league's top 10 scorers, and in this one, had 45 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists on over 50% shooting, 6 of 16 from deep, so he was knocking down some threes. He did everything he could. Cam Thomas is the definition of a walking bucket. He doesn't do a lot of other things out there at times, but regardless of what is going on, Cam Thomas is going to get you some buckets. I'm so happy the Nets are giving him minutes. He's showing that what he did last year when he was actually given a chance isn't a fluke. He's just a really good scorer. It hasn't resulted in a ton of wins for the Nets yet, but the fact that he's doing this on a team that doesn't have a lot of great offensive options outside of him in terms of self-creation, they've got some good like catch and shoot guys, 3-and-D perimeter players. Cam Thomas has been a revelation for them. I'm happy he's getting these minutes. He's getting the green light on offense because they need this type of play from him. They need a bucket getter, and Cam Thomas is proving that he's exactly that. Mikal Bridges had one of his better games of the season too. 31 points, 5 boards, 4 assists on 50% shooting. They did everything they could, just ultimately weren't enough for the Giannis-led Bucks, who do get another win, but still, it remains very hit or miss a lot of moments for them when it feels like they should be in a bit more of a rhythm by now. In a rematch of the 2020 finals, the Lakers and Heat go ahead and face off in Miami, with the Heat getting this one in a 1-point win. Really close battle back and forth. The Heat were leading pretty big for a good portion of this game going into the fourth quarter, and then they blew the lead, which again, like I said earlier, and I think my first week takeaways video, it feels like the Heat continue to be the heart attack team of the entire league. Heat fans, I'm sure you recognize this. Every time they get into a fourth quarter and they've got a lead, they're going to let the other team back into the game. But they do go ahead and get this win, mainly behind the play of Bam Adebayo, who had a 22-point, 20-board, 10-assist triple-double, and even hit a 3. Huge game for Bam Adebayo going up against another one of the best bigs in the league in Anthony Davis, who was in and out of this game. He missed the end of it due to a groin injury. Hopefully it's nothing too serious, but it is concerning. Like I said, he came in and out. He tried to play through it, but it just wasn't really worth it, and he wasn't able to look like himself, was very clearly laboring when he was on the court. LeBron was the big reason the Lakers battled back in this one. Had 13 points in the fourth quarter, 30 points on the night, and Cam Reddish got gifted an opportunity from LeBron, who drove into the paint. Jimmy and Bam were both there. He swung it to Cam Reddish in the corner with a 3, a chance to go ahead and be the hero and win the game. and he bricked it because it feels like even though LeBron made the right play, that always seems to happen to him, unfortunately. A lot of people bringing up the discourse again that, oh, Jordan would have taken that shot, this and that. Anybody who took that shot is probably getting blocked. It's a bad shot to take. He found the open shooter. Cam Reddish just doesn't knock it down. Other guys who are deserving of shoutouts include Jimmy Butler, who had 28, 4, and 6, and Tyler Hero, who had 22 points. And finally, the last game I want to get into in detail is Clippers versus Knicks. The game that I thought was going to be like the title game of this recap because James Harden made his Clippers debut, and instead, it wasn't the most enjoyable game to watch. The Knicks pulled away from this one in the fourth quarter. It was really low scoring. Felt like both teams were really kind of out of rhythm. The Clippers, of course, adding Harden into the mix. Felt like they were still trying to figure out, okay, when do I shoot the ball? Who should get the ball in this situation? Harden himself was fine. 17 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists on 6 of 9 shooting. He was playing pretty passively at times, which I think is fine. He's trying to find his role, figure out when to take his shots, when to let other guys go ahead and have their moments. There's going to be a bit of growing pains for this Clippers team eventually. I think they'll be really good, but it's going to take some time. Paul George struggled. Kawhi was solid, but not great. They put up just 97 points. A really big problem for them in this game was the offensive rebounding. The Knicks destroyed the Clippers in that regard, 18-7, with Mitchell Robinson grabbing 9 offensive boards by himself, beating the Clippers solo. He's been amazing to start this season on the offensive glass and as a defensive anchor down there, playing some of his best basketball this season. Also, Julius Randle, big bounce back game for him, 27 points, 10 boards, 3 assists. RJ Barrett continues to play really well to start the season with 26, 6, and 4. The Clippers just couldn't get a lot of stuff going. I think one big problem for them is the lack of size that they have now, trading Batum, Covington, and Marcus Morris in that Harden deal. I think they might eventually have to make some kind of move to add some more size to their front court, especially because Mason Plumlee also left this one with an injury. We have yet to see, or at least I have yet to see, if it's anything substantial and long term, but even if he misses a little bit of time, they got to find someone to add to this mix. To wrap things up, let's go ahead and rapid fire through the final games. The Pacers dropped 152 points against the Spurs in a big showing for their offense, which continues to look unstoppable. The Warriors dominate late to take down the Pistons behind another great Steph game, which has become typical. The Mavericks put the Magic away in the fourth quarter, moved to 6-1 on the season with 20+ point games from both Kyrie and Luka. Big things from the Mavericks so far. They might be getting a video here at some point soon. The Bulls blow out the Jazz behind the play of 8 double-digit scores. The Rockets moved to 500 on the season, blowing out the Kings for a second straight game, with Şengün dropping 12 dimes. I believe I saw on the Rockets broadcast that it's tied for the most assists ever by a Rockets center with Hakeem Olajuwon. He's been their best player so far to start this season. Big breakout year for Şengün so far. Meanwhile, for the Kings, they are really struggling without De'Aaron Fox. They need him back at some point soon. His scoring, his playmaking, his ability to get downhill and put pressure on the rim, all things that the Kings really lack with him out of the lineup. The Nuggets also blow out the Pelicans after being down big in the third quarter, behind another just absurd stat line from Jokic. 35 points, 14 boards, and 12 assists. Meanwhile, for the Pelicans, Jordan Hawkins has his best game as a rookie, dropping 7 threes and a total 31 points. With all that being said, those are the games from this night. Drop me your takeaways down below, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also, like I said earlier, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on these videos. Let me know what you think about this Timberwolves team. Do you think they can continue to be the best defense in the league? Is Ant reaching superstar status here at some point soon? Where would you rank him in the league? Can they battle with some teams in the playoffs, or are they going to go ahead and fall a little bit down the standings like we've seen from them at some points? Would you trade Cat? If so, who would you try and go ahead and get for him? Let me know all that below. Always love to hear what y'all have to say. And yeah, I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.